What a morning, everybody. We have a lot to talk about with Tiffany Moss, and we'll get to that in a minute. But right now, we're going to switch gears and focus on a new trial here on the Law and Crime Network. On May 2nd, we're planning on covering the trial of Michael Gargiulo. Now, he's accused of murdering multiple women, including Ashley Ellerin. Now, Ashley was a 22-year-old woman living in LA who was found brutally stabbed to death in her home on February 22nd, 2001. Now, there's been a lot written about Ashley over the years, particularly about her reported relationship with actor Ashton Kutcher at the time of her death. But our next guest says, who was friends with Ashley, and wants to shed some light on things that the media may be missing. Here's a short clip of her speaking more about this.
And I wanted to look at how Ashley and I had started out so similarly and ended up in such different places. I started by trying to learn as much as I could about the alleged killer. I went to his hometown in Illinois and I poked around his high school and the site of his first alleged murder. And then I went to Ashley's strip club in Las Vegas and I drank an overpriced cocktail and chatted with the manager. After that, I requested her autopsy report from the LA County coroner, and I spent hours poring over the condition of her body. I was doing the work a journalist is supposed to do. I was requesting documents, following leads, trying to piece it all together. But there was just one problem. I wasn't actually learning about Ashley. It was like I was writing an episode of Law & Order without even realizing it. And I, too, had stepped right over a dead girl to do it.
Well, let's learn more about Ashley. Carolyn Murnick is the author of The Hot One, which discusses more about this case, and she joins us now. Carolyn, good to have you here. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start from the beginning. You were good friends with Ashley. I mean, how did you meet her originally?
I consider Ashley my first best friend. We met when we were girls growing up in rural New Jersey in the late 80s. Her family had moved there from California, and we, became fast, instant best friends after meeting in the 4th grade in our public school.
Yeah, when you look at photos, you kind of seem similar styles, similar look. I mean, that's how you gravitated towards each other.
We liked to dress the same. We took piano lessons from the same teacher and played duets together, and we played in the woods, and we went to art classes. We did all the sort of little girl kind of innocent stuff that you do as kids.
So she was like a sister in a way. But eventually, if I understand it correctly, you guys grew apart. And why did that happen?
Well, geographically at first, her family moved back to California when we were in high school. And this was before, texting and email, so we didn't have as many opportunities to keep in touch. And over the few times we saw each other in high school and in the early college, I could tell that the two of us were living different lives.
How so?
Well, Ashley was always a very confident and just sort of free-spirited girl, and I think she was getting more into partying, and then when she moved to LA, the last time I saw her, she was involved in a very different lifestyle than I was as a student in New York. She was hanging out with actors and dating older guys and dabbling in the sex industry.
Did she enjoy it? Was this something that she was liking, or something that she felt, I'm part of this culture and this is what I'm doing now, it's just part of the job?
She seemed to be really, living her best life, I think. She seemed to be confident and happy and excited, and she knew that she was doing things differently than maybe someone else her age might be, but she seemed to really be enjoying herself. And I was intimidated by her at the time.
Were you ever worried about her being involved in this kinds of stuff?
It's so hard to say that now, knowing what had happened, and the perspective I had as another 20-year-old. I'm not sure I was mature enough to say I was worried, but I knew that she and I felt so different from one another, and I didn't know if our friendship was going to last.
And you didn't feel comfortable talking to her about this, like, this is what I think about what you're doing, or anything like that?
I'm not sure how many 20-year-olds do talk that maturely to each other about their friendship. I just knew that, wow, things feel so different than they used to when we were kids, and it's sort of painful and confusing, and I'm not sure what to say.
It's a classic case. I mean, a lot of people grow apart at that kind of age, and the one thing that's different, and I really want to get into this now, is the day that you found out she was killed. How did you find out? I
found out in our town newspaper in New Jersey. She still had community in our town, and so it was reported in the Burnsville News, where we lived, that a former PPAC resident was found murdered in Hollywood. And it shared some details about how she was found and that it was happened at home, and it talked about her being a fashion student at the time, and there were some quotes from family friends talking about, you know, how painful and tragic this was.
What were you feeling when you saw this?
I was shocked and numb. You know, I felt so many different things at once. I immediately thought back to when I had last seen her, which was about a year earlier, and all I knew was that the last time, you know, we had been in touch, I knew that she was working in the sex industry, doing drugs, and living such a different life that I immediately thought there has to be some connection here.
And look, as the story came out, I have to address the biggest thing that people were talking about at the time, and I want to ask you about the media portrayal of this. You know, Ashton Kutcher, it was said, it's been reported, was in a relationship or was dating or seeing Ashley, and apparently he wanted to go to a post-Grammys party with her the night of her killing, showed up at her house, saw these red stains on the carpet, thought it was wine, didn't investigate further, and left. He has been criticized, and he, we believe, is going to be testifying at the trial of Michael Gargiulo. When you learned about his involvement with her and him coming to the crime scene, what were you thinking? What do you think now?
Well, first of all, you know, you're right that a lot of media attention has been focused on Ashton Kutcher
Absolutely.
with this case. And, you know, there's things you can find in all different languages on the internet now reporting about Ashton Kutcher's girlfriend and Ashton's tragedy. And, you know, a lot of what I explore in my book is how unfortunate it is that, you know, it really eclipses the life of the victims in this case. And there are also 3 other victims in this case attached to this alleged murderer, and most of the attention is on Ashton Kutcher's girlfriend, which,
Sure.
you know, she wasn't his girlfriend, and from my research and talking to her friends, he was someone that hung out in their social circles, and the night of her murder was going to be the first time that they were spending time together one-on-one. And so he came to pick her up for this agreed-upon date. They were going to go to some post-Grammys party and found that she didn't answer the door, and then exactly what you said, looked in the window and saw what he thought was wine on the carpet. It's, you know, it's such a strange thing to put your head into now. The more and more as I've learned about, you know, how their life was and how they had different people stopping by, people you don't necessarily, you know, you hang out with a lot of different people when you're in your early 20s, and I think that potentially they were a loose connection, and he didn't really necessarily think anything was that odd, that he showed up at someone's house, she wasn't there, oh, maybe we got the plans wrong.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think anything more than that.
Right, and like you said, look, it's the media because obviously they're going to, you know, touch upon the celebrity factor of it. I was interested in it to see if he could have done more, and that's something that people
Right.
have been focusing on. And we're obviously going to learn more about this when the trial
Yeah.
hits. I want to focus, though, on Michael Gargiulo.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know this name? I mean, when you heard about what happened to Ashley, you did your own bit of investigation. Did he come up as one of the people you were looking at?
No, in fact, you know, I knew nothing about him until I got to the preliminary hearing, which was in 2010 now. And so, you know, I heard that he was the person arrested and connected to these 3 other murders in 2008, which is when I started to look into things. And I had no idea who he was. I had no idea if he was known to her. And it wasn't until 2010 at the preliminary hearing that I learned, yes, he was someone that they knew socially and had been in her life for at least a few months before the murder.
Right, I think he was a neighbor and maybe a repairman, and I
Right.
believe he might have fixed her heater at one point. So
Yep.
Ashley never spoke to you about Michael Gargiulo,
No.
said, hey, I have this neighbor, nothing like that.
I don't think that the last time we saw each other, which was late '99, that he had met her yet.
But I imagine either you're going to be following the trial, will you go to the trial?
I'm planning to be there for opening statements later this week and see as long as I can stay.
Right, absolutely. Look, if you had the opportunity to speak to Ashley and
Yeah.
speak to her, and what would you say to her? I know it's a difficult question
Yeah.
to ask, but what would you say to her? Because obviously there's a lot that you want the media and the public to know about Ashley, but what would you like to say to her if you could?
It's such a complicated question. I wish that her life had turned out differently, obviously. I think that, you know, it's a tragedy. She died at 22. I'm now 40 years old. She would be 41. I think a lot about what kind of life she might have had.
Is there any dangers to that lifestyle that you warn people about, that, you know, if you get involved, and look, we don't know what the motivations were, we don't know what it's about, but it's just, you said that it was a very different life, and going living and working in LA.
Right.
Is there anything that you want to advise people?
Well, not necessarily, because, Michael Gargiulo, this alleged killer, was not connected to Ashley's work in the sex industry or her drug use. And so I don't want to give the wrong idea that I'm trying to cast judgment upon people that make different lifestyle choices, because those things were not connected to her murder. However, in the preliminary hearing, the defense attorney really harped on that with almost every witness, asking them to detail how many men did Ashley entertain at different nights and what kind of drugs did you know her to do. And that's clearly a tactic that comes up both in the media and in court to sort of create reasonable doubt or to erode sympathy for the victim. And that's something that I find pretty outrageous. And so I definitely don't want to say that, I want to make clear that I don't think that there's any connection between her lifestyle choices and her murder. And I think that for most young people in their 20s, they go through phases, and who knows what she would have been doing at 25 or 28,
Absolutely. And listen, thank goodness for you to go forward and speak on Ashley's behalf, because again, with so much focus on other factors in the case, you are giving her a voice. So I really think you're doing a tremendous job. And thanks so much for coming on and talking more about it. Appreciate it. All right, everybody, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to focus more on the Tiffany Moss trial. We'll be right back.